They said she was too big, too broad-shouldered, too heavy for a girl, and in a world where beauty was measured by how small and fragile you looked, Clara had been judged, weighed, criticized, and finally sold off like a bird nobody wanted. Her stepfamily claimed she ate too much, took up too much space, and that her body was a problem they needed to get rid of. They whispered that no man would ever want a girl built like her, a girl with strength instead of delicacy, a girl who could lift haystacks better than their sons. They told the neighbors that she was lazy, unlovable, and ruining their household, when the truth was, Clara was the one who woke before sunrise, fed the animals, hauled water, and worked until her back screamed. But no amount of work could erase the resentment they had toward her mother for dying and leaving them with the girl they didn't want. So when a wandering trader rode into town and said he was willing to pay a single dollar for help on the road, they didn't hesitate. They pushed Clara forward, told the trader she'd be useful for carrying loads, and signed her away. She didn't cry as they did it. She had learned long ago that tears only made them crueler. She simply lowered her head and stepped onto the wagon, trying her best to shrink herself into a small shape she could never be. But fate is strange. It has a way of twisting the knife just long enough before offering a hand. And that hand appeared in the form of a tall cowboy leaning on a chestnut stallion by the roadside, hat tilted low, arms crossed as if waiting for something or someone. The trader scoffed when he saw him, and muttered that the cowboy had been following him for days. But Clara didn't pay attention. She only stared at the horizon, wishing she could disappear into it. The trader snapped at her to lift crates, and she obeyed, though her hands trembled. She didn't see the cowboy watching her with a slow, unreadable expression. She didn't see his jaw clench when the trader barked at her. She didn't hear the muttered curse under his breath when she stumbled under the weight of a heavy barrel, but kept going anyway, refusing to complain. Later, when the wagon reached the next town, the trader left her hauling water while he went inside the saloon. Clara was outside alone when she heard the creak of leather behind her. She turned and found the cowboy standing there, tall, broad, silent, the kind of presence that made the air feel still. He studied her with eyes the color of river rock, calm yet intense, and finally spoke in a voice deep enough to vibrate through her ribs. "How much did he pay for you?" The question hit her like a fist. She didn't want anyone to know, but the truth slipped out, small and ashamed. $1. The cowboy let out a slow breath as if the number physically offended him. "And they let you go just like that?" She nodded. He stepped closer, not threatening, but steady, grounding, as though he were anchoring her trembling spirit. "Do you want to stay with that man?" Her voice cracked. "I don't have a choice." The cowboy shook his head once. "Everyone's got a choice, even when people try to take it from them." Without another word, he marched into the saloon. A minute later, shouts exploded inside, glasses shattered, boots thudded. When he came back out, the trader was unconscious on the floor, and the barkeep was yelling that next time they'd charge for broken furniture. The cowboy dusted his hands and held up a silver coin. "I paid $10 for you," he said, his voice controlled but blazing underneath. "Not because you're property, but because he needed to learn a lesson about how to treat a person." Then, before she could respond, he walked toward her, stopped right in front of her, and did something nobody had ever done, not in her entire life. He put his arms around her waist, lifted her, not struggling, not straining, but lifting her like she was weightless, and said with quiet certainty, "You're just right for my arms." The world stopped. The wind stilled. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Nobody had ever said she was just right. She had been too big, too heavy, too strong, too everything her whole life. But he said it like a truth carved into stone, truth he had always known. Clara tried to speak, but no words came out. Her throat tightened too much. The cowboy Noah, he finally introduced himself, set her gently onto his horse and climbed up behind her, steadying her with hands warm and firm. His presence didn't make her smaller, it made her feel safe exactly as she was. As they rode away, she asked in a trembling whisper, "Why did you help me?" He answered simply, "Because I've been looking for someone like you." Her breath caught. "Someone like me?" she repeated, disbelieving. Noah nodded. Someone strong. Someone who doesn't break even when people try to crush them. Someone who deserves better. And Clara, who had spent years shrinking, suddenly felt the sky widen above her. For the first time, she wondered if maybe she wasn't the problem. Maybe she had simply been surrounded by people too small to understand her. As the horse galloped across open land, and the sun painted the sky gold, Clara felt something warm bloom inside her. Hope, fragile but alive. She didn't know where they were going, or what waited ahead. But riding with Noah made her feel like she wasn't running from something anymore. She was running towards something. Something bigger. Something hers. And as the dust rose behind them, Noah leaned closer and said, "Clara, from now on, nobody gets to decide your worth except you." She didn't trust her voice enough to answer, but she nodded, clutching the saddle as the horizon opened like a promise. And as their journey truly began, Clara whispered to herself, "Maybe I'm finally going home." Morning sunlight streamed through the cracks in the barn walls, warming Clara's face and pulling her gently out of sleep. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Her body expected the usual aches from sleeping on a cold, wooden floor, expected to wake to sharp voices telling her to get up and work. But the hay beneath her was soft. The air smelled like horses and fresh morning dew, and the coat around her shoulders was heavy and warm. Noah's coat. The memory hit her like a sunrise. The ride, the creek, the cowboy lifting her like she weighed nothing, telling her she was just right for his arms. She sat up slowly, her hair falling over her face, and glanced toward the barn door. Noah was leaning against the frame, exactly where she had last seen him, boots planted firmly in the dirt, arms crossed, hat pulled low as he watched the horizon with the patience of a man carved from mountain stone. He hadn't slept, not even for a moment. He noticed her the instant she moved, turning his head with a soft nod. "Mornin', Clara." His voice was rough from the long night, but warm, steady, full of something she wasn't used to. Concern. She pushed herself to her feet, embarrassed that he had stayed awake just for her. "You should have slept," she said quietly. Noah shrugged like it didn't matter. "Didn't want anything sneaking in while you were out." No one had ever protected her like that. She wasn't sure what to do with the feeling, so she held his coat out to him. "Thank you for everything." He took the coat, brushing her fingers by accident. She felt the spark all the way up her arm. "We've got a long ride today," he said gently. "My ranch is about half a day's journey from here. Once we get there, you'll have a real bed, and real food, and a place where nobody gets to treat you like you're less than human." Clara stared at him, overwhelmed by the promise in his voice. "But I don't want to be a burden." Noah stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head to look at him properly. "Clara," he said quietly, "you could never be a burden. Not to me." Her throat tightened again, and she had to look away. They saddled the horse together, and each time, Clara lifted something heavy. Noah watched with an expression that wasn't judgment or disapproval, it was admiration. Like he liked her strength. Like he saw beauty in the way she moved, in the power she carried without apology. When she mounted the horse with practiced ease, he raised a brow. "You've done this before." "Only when the animals needed tending," she said. "My stepbrothers were too slow to help." Noah chuckled under his breath. "Sounds like they were the burdens, not you." She cracked a tiny smile, the first real smile she'd shown in years. They rode out as the sun climbed higher, golden light spilling across miles of open prairie. The wind rushed through Clara's hair, and behind her, Noah steadied her with one hand on her waist. The touch, warm, confident, protective. "You're quiet this morning," he murmured near her ear. "Thinking about something?" She hesitated. "I'm thinking about what happens when we reach your ranch." Noah didn't rush her. He waited, patient as always. "And what's worrying you?" She swallowed. "That you'll change your mind. That you'll realize I'm not worth the trouble." Noah tightened his arm around her, just a little, enough for her to feel the emphasis of his words. "I don't change my mind," he said softly but firmly. "And I sure as hell don't misjudge worth. Not yours." His certainty washed over her like sunlight. No man had ever spoken about her like that, not with confidence, not with conviction, not with genuine care. She didn't know how to absorb it. She only knew it felt like being seen for the first time. Around midday, they stopped near a ridge overlooking a sweeping valley, where Noah's ranch lay nestled between hills like a hidden world untouched by cruelty. Wooden fences lined green pastures, horses grazed freely, and a large cabin stood at the center weathered, sturdy home. Clara stared, breath caught in her chest. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Noah didn't look at the ranch. He looked at her. "It'll be even more beautiful with you in it." Her heart stuttered, her pulse racing with a mix of fear and hope. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she finally asked, the question trembling out of her. "Nobody ever has been." Noah leaned slightly forward, his chin brushing the top of her head, his voice low and honest. "Because you deserve kindness," he said. "Deserve love. Deserve peace. And because I don't know who told you otherwise. But they were wrong." She closed her eyes against the sting of tears she refused to let fall. She wasn't used to soft words. They felt like fragile things she might break if she held too tightly. When they reached the ranch, Noah helped her down from the horse, the same way he had lifted her the day before, smooth, steady, strong. His hands lingered at her waist, not possessive, but reassuring. "Welcome home," he said simply. Clara froze. Home. She had never had one. Not really. Not one she wanted to return to. Not one where she belonged. She looked around the open land, the wooden cabin, the wide sky, and for the first time in her life, she imagined a future. A real one. Something warm. Something hers. Noah led her inside the cabin, where the wood floor creaked under their boots and the scent of pine filled the air. There were 2 chairs by the fireplace, blankets neatly folded, shelves filled with books and tools. Everything was clean, but lived in, cared for by a man who spent years alone, yet kept space as if waiting for someone. He glanced at her. "It ain't fancy," he said, "but it's safe. And you're welcome here as long as you want." Clara traced her fingers along the edge of the table, overwhelmed. "I don't know how to repay you." Noah stepped close, his voice soft. "You don't owe me anything. I helped you because it was right. The rest," he paused. "The rest is up to you." She met his eyes, and in them, she saw something undeniable: hope, affection, maybe even the early spark of something deeper. As afternoon passed, Noah showed her the stables, the barn, the pasture. He taught her how he fed the horses, how he maintained the ranch, and each time she offered to help, he didn't question her ability like others had. He trusted her. He valued her. He stood beside her as an equal when she effortlessly lifted a sack of feed that even some men struggled with. Noah didn't gasp or mock her, he grinned. "That's my girl," he murmured without thinking. Clara stopped, stunned, her cheeks flushing as warmth spread through her chest. Noah realized what he'd said and straightened, clearing his throat, suddenly shy for the first time. I mean, you're strong is all." But Clara didn't miss the truth in his slip, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel ashamed of her size or strength. She felt wanted exactly as she was. Later, when the sun began setting, Clara stood by the fence, watching the sky bleed pink and orange. Noah approached her slowly, as if careful not to disturb a delicate moment. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, just taking it in. He stood beside her, their arms barely brushing. "I know this is all new, and I know you've been through hell, but I need you to know something." She looked up at him. He met her eyes with unwavering seriousness. "You're safe," he said. "I'll make sure you're safe every day you're here." Clara's heart tightened with a fierce, aching emotion she wasn't prepared for. "Why?" she whispered. Noah's voice was gentle. "Because you deserve a life where nobody ever sells you, belittles you, or hurts you again." And then, quieter, "Because you matter to me more than you know." Clara didn't know how to respond, so she didn't try. Instead, she stepped closer, letting her shoulder lean into his just slightly. It was the smallest gesture, but it was the first time she'd ever leaned on someone without fear, and Noah leaned right back.